Turf Talk with Drew Miller.
Welcome to Tiger Turf Talk. We're excited to be partnering with the Toro company to kick off an all-new summer series focused on their upcoming Grounds Leadership Academy happening in June. Over the next 10 weeks, we will be releasing podcasts following Drew's road trip to Minneapolis and back, where he will be meeting with grounds professionals across the country. Please join us as we talk about their careers, the properties they manage, and their favorite Toro equipment. This episode of Tiger Turf Talk is brought to you by the Toro Company. For over 100 years, the Toro Company has been a leader in innovative solutions for turf maintenance. Through a strong network of professional distributors, Toro proudly offers a wide range of commercial-grade equipment. Visit Toro.com to explore their full lineup of products.
All right, welcome to the next stop of the Toro Grounds Leadership Podcast Tour. We're here in Columbus, Ohio at the Ohio State Turfgrass Research Center. We are here today with one of the best, Ryan DeMay of Field Source.
Wow. I didn't even know.
Let me put it saying it, right?
Okay.
Sports Field Consulting, innovating so many things up here in the state of Ohio and just being a huge advocate for our industry across the board. So how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good.
Bright and early, right?
Yeah, so for those not tuning in live, this is just before 7 a.m. local time here on the East Coast. So yeah,
it's nice to be back at the East Coast. I'm not gonna lie, it has been interesting with the time changes for sure. So
well, you've got, for those of you also that aren't live and can't see, Drew is rocking the extra tall, the 20 fluid ounce Red Bull. What's the rate per thousand on that? It's the whole can. That's the rate today. So it's good to be here, though. It's good to be here and check in with you. I know we've been trying to do this for a while.
Yeah, this is probably one of my most anticipated podcasts for a long time.
Wow.
Man,
you're really setting this thing up.
No. I mean, there's so many things that you've done, that this podcast could go any different way. We could probably do it for 4 or 5 hours, We'll start with Field Source. When did you start the company and how has it been going? Obviously, you've been doing a lot of things from bringing Bermuda grass to Ohio to so many different things. How is Field Source? How is the development of the company and where you're at now?
I mean, it's been awesome. I started it in 2018 as a kind of a side hustle with my day job, which at the time was running all the sports fields and actually indoor and outdoor facilities for Columbus here, the City of Columbus Recreation and Parks Department. So I was there and had some time off. My daughter was born, and I thought about, what would the next chapter look like and all that kind of stuff. I was like, well, we'll try this out and see how it goes. And it's just been so much fun of taking all the stuff that I really enjoyed doing when I was at the city. And obviously when you work for a government agency, there's things that are, hard to deal with sometimes, especially for go-getters like us in the turf industry.
Things you want to do, they won't let you do type of things.
There's that stuff. And so I just tried to take the best parts of that and, make a job out of it at first and then make it into a company. And what I found was that, there really isn't an advocate in the process anywhere, from a design and construction standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, and just ongoing, management of all the facilities and things that we have to take care of. There really isn't that advocate out there for us in our industry to try and strive and put forth a good product. So whether that's on the design side and helping design professionals, work through with architects and engineers, things like that, on the construction side, making sure that, okay, hey, we've got this perfect design. Let's make sure that things get built the right way. And if something comes up that's messy in construction, which, as you know, firsthand.
Fortunately, firsthand
right now. Yeah, you're going through it. I've been following along.
Friggin' hasn't been 90 degrees at all.
Well, and those things, like, so how do you course correct and how do you deal with all that stuff? And a lot of times, we've got well-meaning people on the design side. We've got well-meaning people on the construction side mostly, but they're not usually sports field specialists, right?
Correct.
And a lot of times, I'll be honest, I'm actually going to a meeting here next that there's, some trepidation by a contractor that's got a giant school build, and they've also got to build some baseball and softball fields. And, the conversation that we've had leading up to this has been, we don't know how to do this, and we don't want to screw it up. And I think that's a prevailing thought, too, amongst folks that we deal with that aren't sports turf people or just people in general, right?
Yeah.
And so sports field management is a discipline that it takes time and experience to learn. You're not going to just open up a book and read it. You're not going to go on Google or YouTube and find out all the answers. You have to go through some of that. And so, I think that's where we try to shine through, is take all those experiences, good, bad, and quite honestly, I tell clients all the time, you're buying not just our success, you're buying all of our failures too.
Yeah.
You're buying everything that we've learned from the hard way, so that you don't make that same mistake.
Exactly, and I love that they're being open about the fact, hey, we have no idea, because there are a lot of people that don't, take on that yeah, we're going to just do it ourselves because it's whatever, right? Especially at the high school level. And I see it all the time. And I've tried, 1,000 times in my county to just get them to understand how, you need to have someone here and you need to ensure that this company is actually listening to them, because if they don't, I mean, we're looking at one of our schools, the baseball field needs to be fully renovated after 1 year.
Yeah, we've got, I say this as an unfortunate occurrence, but that's probably I would say 25 to 30% of our business is going in and dealing with the aftermath of, hey, the design wasn't right and or the construction wasn't right, or what's worse, and this is the part that we really hammer on during those parts, is that the the construction manager didn't do something right, the design professional didn't do something right, but a lot of times it's that agency or that organization didn't put the proper resources in place to take care of what they just built. So, hey, we just spent however many hundreds of thousands of dollars doing the football field. Now, if Drew and Brentsville Turf wasn't there to take care of it, would it look that way in 2 or 3 years?
Exactly.
And that's a big question mark. When you ask folks that, administrators and bosses, that question, that usually causes them to pause and think, would it or wouldn't it? And how would we do that?
Yeah. And I think the big thing about all of that is there are handbooks out there, obviously, that have been created, whether that's from professors or whatever, but there are so many companies that are put out to bid, and there are so many companies, it's just like a landscape company that's never done field construction, but they're the lowest bid, and public education's always I want you because you're the cheapest, not knowing that they have no idea. So I'll give you sort of the example of this field. So when the field was put in, it was a forest before, so you have a lot of materials. There were huge rocks everywhere, which was just okay, you need to get this out, you need to get out. And so I was there and I was saying everything that needed to happen. I was checking their work. I said, the grade's wrong here, you need to fix this. You don't have enough infield mix. You didn't do the spec. You didn't have the amount of the spec. I have, a measurement right here. You put 2 inches. You said 5 inches. That's in the spec, and they didn't listen. And so the school then didn't listen to me because they had more pressing matters, and they didn't get their housing permit until the day teachers reported for it. So it's they have priorities, but if you hire someone like you again who can ensure that everything goes smoothly, that's something that's completely different and something that you wouldn't have to worry about. And the worst thing, and I still have a picture of it, I'll show you. First base, the baseline, the cutouts. So the right side on the foul territory, the sod went down and it went off that edge and it curved and it ended up on the foul territory warning track. And it's a big area. And I'm like, you think this is right? He goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh my God, I can't even. It's not real. And then there was so many spots where there was 4-inch gaps between the sod. They're like, oh, it grows in. I'm like, that's not how that works at all. When it grows in, is there a soil medium for it to stay level? He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this.
Well, but what you're talking about though is absolutely, I'm sure that everybody that's going to listen to this podcast is probably going to say, I've seen something like that either firsthand or a friend of the industry has called me about it to talk about it, or I've seen posts on social media, things like that, and it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
And the thing about what we do here is it's such a small scale in terms of the area that we're able to cover and everything like that, and what we're able to do firsthand. Now we can do stuff and do remote, stuff. We've done that more and more of that. But when it comes down to the boots on the ground stuff, that unfortunately, like you've got to be there and you got to hold people accountable. And I think that's the one thing is that, for better or worse, I got a graduate education in that, working at a huge city that had 10,000 employees, and a lot of bureaucracy, red tape. And I think the one conversation I remember having with a trainer one time, we got a lot of training. It was really, really, you would think of, you'd go in and be like, oh God. Like I don't
do it to me.
Yeah,
Not this time.
But there was a lot of cool stuff in there, and the one thing that this one guy said that really made a mark on me was like, don't confuse an uncomfortable conversation with an awkward conversation.
Yeah.
You can make it awkward really, really quick if you go fly off the handle, if you're not, centered.
Yeah.
And he talked about this whole thing of like, people sometimes, what did he call it? The mood elevator, right? So you can come in and be, all the way up here, like dukes up, ready to go, or you can come in here with, white gloves on and, oh, I'm sorry that you laid those sod seams with 4-inch gaps. It's okay. You got to be somewhere like right in the middle.
Right,
and what
firm but not scary.
Curious. He just said curious, and that's
interesting.
Just come into every situation curious, and until you're satisfied, go ahead and be able to have an uncomfortable conversation. Uncomfortable conversation means, hey, listen, this is not correct. This is not what we have in our specifications, and we're not going to pay for this. So you have two choices right now. You can do the work correctly, get paid, or you can not get paid and
redo it.
we'll go a different route. So I think there's that whole aspect of just the last little bit, that last 5-10% that really makes a project come together. And I think too that the tough part is that there's probably a couple of things that I see more prevalent. One is that people don't know the difference between good work, great work, and really, really poor work all the way to the other end.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times in our industry, this kind of goes towards the, I hear this a lot in the natural versus synthetic debate. Yeah. And not to bring that up and get too far into that.
We can go into that if we want to.
We can. And my thing is that with that is that synthetic is never going to go away.
Never.
I mean, in some way, shape, or form, it will be a part of what we do as an industry, whether we like it or not, or whether we value it or not. But you need a qualified professional to take care of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on the flip side of that, you've got administrators, elected officials, people like that see
the quick fix.
Well, they see that as one end of the continuum, and then they see a mud pit on the other end of the continuum, and they see nothing in between. And it's like, there's a lot of stuff on the natural side.
More than a lot.
That can be done to have a really good field. And the thing I'd like to say too is that, we do professional fields, we do collegiate fields, but our bread and butter, just as an ethos of who we are, like I grew up, I loved watching high school football, high school baseball. Like that was, just
where the passion is,
Yeah, it's where the passion is. And like, I grew up in an area where it was a big thing. And so we would go to games that, where school wasn't even playing. There's games Friday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. We just go to some random game because,
that's awesome.
My dad and my brothers wanted to go to it. So I have a passion on that community level of, seeing a school or seeing a community or a park system or whatever, take that pride and take that leap of, hey, listen, it's not going to be Fenway Park. It's not going to be,
but in a way
Lane
it
Stadium.
is, and in a way it is,
But it's theirs, right? It's theirs. They own it. They have a piece of it. And, it's something that you can't take away from them. So it's not to sound corny or anything like that, but I think the whole point there is that you get on this wide spectrum of, hey, there's a lot of stuff between point A and point B being synthetic and a really, really crappy field.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of good things that you can do within that. That being said, the way to get there and how you do it is a process.
Yeah.
It's not just, there's no hacks, there's no, quick fixes or stuff like that. And I think that's a lot of times what we hear is that, people don't have the money or they don't have this or that. And a lot of times I say that it's not usually a money issue, it's a priority issue.
Yeah.
They want to spend their money elsewhere. And the thing that we talk about with, those administrators and those elected officials, when it comes down to it, the people that we as sports field managers report to.
Yeah.
That's who we interact with. That's really our customer. Now we deal with sports field managers all day, every day, and love it. Love that part of it. But you have to be able to talk to their bosses and their higher ups. And the one thing that we say is this, especially in the school community, you would know this, especially working in the school system. Does anybody really know if the faucet in the boys' bathroom doesn't work? No. The boys might, the janitor might, the custodian might. That's about it.
Yeah.
Now, if the football field's not right on Friday night, everybody's going to know, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? Especially in the school community, I don't know how it is in Virginia, but here in Ohio and most of the states around here, those are all registered voters. Those are all people that decide your future and your fate as a district from a financial aspect or from a school board standpoint. So it's not meant to scare them. It's just meant to influence their decision making of, hey, you have to have a really disciplined approach here to this process to make sure you get it right. And you have to involve your sports field manager from the get-go. And if you don't have one, right, there's still got to be some directly responsible individual who is doing something to take care of this field, right?
Yeah.
And we have clients that range the gamut of, they have a qualified, educated, experienced sports field manager all the way down to they have a guy or a gal that their job is to mow the grass.
Yeah.
And we work with those folks too, because you have to meet people where they are.
Exactly.
You can't just go in there and be like, gosh darn it, you're going to hire a sports field manager and you're going to pay him $70,000 a year and you're going to bet him. It's like, whoa. Let's just start.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah, they get scared when I hear all that stuff. So, but I think we have to work towards that. I think that's one thing. And this is one thing to converse about is like the professionalism side of things. So, you're bringing in more and more kids into the industry. And I think it's a really good thing to show them all the nuts and bolts of how to take care of a field, everything like that.
Yeah.
But what do you think their future is as far as being like true leaders, like 10, 15 years down the road and being able to go into the school superintendent's office and say, hey, I'm going to pitch you a project that's going to cost us $1 million. And here's the reasons why. Like, do you see that in those kids of having that ability now?
I do. Some of them. So a big thing about like my program, what we try to do is it's not just about, the field management. It's about being able to have, a positive relationship with those that are our stakeholders, like whenever we have projects like that, we're working with our athletic director, they're the ones that talk to them. Obviously I'm going to converse with them, but like, that's like the small levels that I can do right now. Right.
Absolutely.
To the point where, our kids are meeting with our superintendent of schools on things like it's stuff where like you can put them in that position, maybe scare them a little bit. In a good sense, like they get the understanding. I was like, okay, there's some weight to these conversations. It's not just going in there blind and saying something, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So it's really cool, and there are some kids that I see, and I'm just like, that's the guy or that's the girl that's going to change this industry, And
I think that's the important thing, that from our standpoint, that as sports field managers, as mentors, everything like that. We've got to show and meet. I really believe in that whole meet people we are. It's a it's a big saying, everything like that. But there are people that are gonna go through your program or come through my company or I'm just gonna meet that are gonna be great workers.
Yeah,
and they shouldn't be disrespected for that.
No.
That is a noble thing and it's an awesome thing, and we need people like that. And the people that are gonna go on and go forth into higher and higher levels. I think it parallels a lot with that. So I used to be in golf for a long time. I was in golf for 16 years prior to coming into sports turf and sports field management. And with that profession from the time I started till the time I got out of it, just escalated so much in terms of the respect that golf course superintendents have. And I see that starting. I've seen it starting
for sure
in the last like 4 or 5 years, especially with sports field managers, that I think we're getting to a point now where people within our organizations that don't do what we do are realizing that, hey, okay, strip away all the turf stuff and like we don't have to talk about aerification times or diseases or stuff like that. Like like it's fun. Like we
all the stuff we love.
we can talk about that all day long. But I think that we've got a group of people that are steadfastly determined, that are great at figuring stuff out. And also too that. They want what's best for an area, an organization. They're caretakers. They're people that are used to taking something and taking care of it, or curating it, or making it something that stays the way it should, even in spite of things that they can't control.
Yeah.
And I think those qualities are unmatched. You don't see those a lot in other, disciplines or areas within a school system or within a park system or a university setting or wherever you're at, right? So I think that's the thing, is that we've got to double down, I think, as an industry, double down as individuals, right? And say, hey, listen, we can take care of grass all day long, but we have a lot more skills that are transferable into other areas within the organization to make an impact and still do what we do. Let us have that opportunity, right? And, we deserve that opportunity in a lot of cases. So I hope that those kids, I see the things that they're doing out there from afar. I watch it on social media and everything like that. And it's not just you. There's plenty of programs out there.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just so cool to watch that part and put them, like what you just said, put them in uncomfortable situations, because that's where this incredible amount of growth happens. Whether they realize it now or not, like that to me that's the sign of being a good educator. Is, you got to make them a little bit uncomfortable and get them to either realize, hey, I either need to get my stuff together,
figure it out, or
hey, I did pretty good. And then when they're feeling high and mighty, you gotta put them in a more uncomfortable situation. So I don't know. That's just the optimist in me.
No, for sure. And I think there's right now, and when it comes to leadership of SFMA and the chapters and everything, there are a lot of dynamic groups. They're trying to make that shift. And I think it's something that we've struggled with for a long time in sports field management.
Why do you think that is? I'm curious from your perspective.
That we've struggled, or the reason we have a dynamic group?
Well, I think the reason we have a dynamic group is that we're growing.
Yes.
As we're just not, we're trying to break through that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
why are we struggling?
Why are we struggling? Why have we struggled in the past, and where are we headed? I'm curious, because you see a lot of people, meet and talk to a lot of people, more so than I do.
No, for sure. So I think there was a generation where, people were just content with where they were at, and people were just okay with the fact, all right, I love my job. I don't need to piss anyone off. You know what I mean?
I snorted laughing.
No,
but that's
you're good.
It's so true, though. It's like the CYA, out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
I'm telling, I'm so glad that you said that too, because it parallels golf so much.
Yeah.
It does, because I was at the very tail end of when I started of the whole, you're in the maintenance shed or shack.
Exactly.
And you're to be, not seen,
spoken to unless
not
something's
heard.
Messed up.
Exactly. It was a completely thankless job.
Yeah.
And I think for our folks in putting out their work, I hope that people appreciate, and I think you're seeing more of that. Like Deion Sanders did a video like a month ago.
That was awesome.
It's just somebody like that who appreciates, listen, it took a lot of work by a whole bunch of people for us to run out here on a Saturday afternoon and play football.
After 3 feet of snow.
Or whatever, a rainstorm. I can remember when Amy Fatty was at Michigan State, Ohio State played up there, and they pushed over a foot of snow off.
Yeah.
And people, I can remember.
Shout out Amy.
Yeah. Hi, Amy. People were on social media oh, the field's terrible. It's if you even knew that those people were literally
in the last 10 hours.
Oh, overnight. Or
they didn't go home.
I can remember, so you worked at the Steelers. I can remember a game, gosh, this is maybe 10, 12 years ago.
Is it
maybe
the punt game? Is it the punt game, or are we talking about the punt game?
I don't know which game. I just know it was a Monday Night Football game, and they had just resodded, they had a pit game on Thursday, they resod, and then
the football? Stuck in the sod.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
Oh man, it was
it replays in Chris's head. He's just
but
the perfect storm of that happening.
It's not to bring up bad memories and bad stuff, but it's I think there's a couple things there is that people don't realize. They could have said, hey, it's going to rain. We're just going to do a half whatever job on getting the sod. And no, they executed at a high level, knowing hey, we've got to have this thing ready.
Yeah.
No matter what. And then on the flip side of that is that no matter what happens, you've got to go out there and you got a game. So
Mother Nature.
And you can't win against
exactly.
that. But I think that's interesting that you say that about why the industry has been the way that it is, or perceived the way that it is. And I guess so. From so you have those conversations with superintendents and everything like that, or your higher ups, your stakeholders. two things on that I want to ask you about. I'm flipping the script here.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, number one is, what is it that you think either commands or gets respect from those people? Like, if you were going to give advice to a sports field manager, what would you tell them to do to command that respect or to earn that respect?
I mean, obviously you have to perform at your job, and that's not something I would tell them. That's something that would have to be a given in order to go and have these conversations.
Sure, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
You got to perform at a high level.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So
Yep.
I think, like a lot of the conversations I've had, especially with like when it comes to the higher ups, and then I don't know if you know Dr. Trey Straw down in Texas A&M.
Oh yeah,
working on the Parks and Rec level and whatnot. I think the shift that we're seeing is that there is a lot of data-driven points that are just going to justify when we want something.
I think so. Chase is a great example. Besides him, his advisors, and his mother, I think I'm the only other person that's read his 286-page dissertation cover to cover multiple times.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a good point. So, if you haven't read it, quick synopsis. Basically, spatial analysis of surface firmness and irrigation, dry and wet spots, essentially, right? And mapping those out related to injuries, right?
Yeah.
So it was like a club rugby field, I think a club soccer field, I can't remember, but I know they're club sports there at University of Georgia where he did his PhD. And what was interesting is that the injuries correlated. It was like 80 or 86% of the time on these margin areas, right? This edge effect of between where wet and dry spots were or hard and soft spots were. And if there was ever a case of somebody saying, well, an administrator or a higher up or whomever, right, bean counter saying, well, I don't know if we want to put in irrigation, or I think our irrigation's fine. It's been there for 20 years. And you can be like, listen, like the distribution uniformity on the system is like 50%.
Just so you know, it's not there.
Yeah. Like it can make the ground wet, but like that's a relative term, right? Like,
for sure.
Would you like to try this TDR, sir? But no, so for real though, it's a great thing that you can point to from a research perspective, because a lot of, especially in education now, right? Evidence-based, teaching methods, things like that. So research does carry some weight with those folks, and being able to say, okay, hey, listen, in this study, over a course of 2 years, we have, a PhD that's telling us that there's a significantly higher incidence of injury in areas that are either wet or dry. And how do we fix that? Well,
irrigation.
Properly spaced, properly performing irrigation. So, why do we need that person that, has to go out 8 hours every month and, audit the system and make sure it's working correctly? Or why do we have to put in a new system? Or why are we at a new build putting an irrigation system into this field?
Yeah.
There's your reason why,
Perfect.
Just injury reduction, making a field safer. So there's a lot of that. I think that's a great point about just, trying to bring stuff like that to the table.
So there's a couple other things that I think that have brought our industry forward, and a lot of great minds. So there are two that have stood out with me. Jimmy Simpson, shout out Jimmy. When I had a conversation with him, it's no longer about saying no to, event loads or tournaments or concerts or things like that. It's pushing all of the incredible things that are coming out when it comes to turf grass management, whether that's the genetics of the actual plant, whether that's the new cultural practices that have come out that have been critical to a lot of people's operations. It's pushing to the point where we can get that seat at the table because we're allowing there to be more and more, when it comes to the business side of things, That's
a great point. And I think that's one thing that I will die on this hill as a sports field manager that, I worked at a place that was literally one of the busiest parks in the country. And you don't really even get the chance to say no.
Exactly.
Very often.
Exactly.
So, when we're doing, on 31 fields, for example, here at Berliner Park in Columbus, we're doing 16,500, 17,000 games in a year, right? Running all that through there, you don't get the chance to say no very often. And I think that's where how to get to yes is a very experiential trait that you get. And it's also you have to have a lot of patience. You have to have 100%. A lot of understanding. and you have to rely on those tools and resources. And here's the problem, and I think we're seeing it too. We're seeing this especially at the professional level, a little bit at the collegiate level.
Starting to infiltrate the collegiate level,
is saying yes, but not getting the resources in return.
Exactly.
And I don't know, honestly, I don't have an answer other than
hope for the best.
well, you gotta find, maybe seek life elsewhere. I don't know, but of saying yes, we'll do that, but we need these resources. Oh, we're not going to pay for flooring, or I can think of professional situations here, without naming names, where there's been big events done, and they're like, you don't need to resod. You'll be fine. You can grow out of it. And it's like, are you okay with a field looking like that? We don't like it, but. And there's also that
I'm
part.
With you.
There's two parts of that, right? There's the part where you're just getting crapped on, like you're just getting, hey, you're going to do a concert every road trip, and you don't get an extra assistant or anybody to help. You take a night off, so you don't have to be here and watch Billy Joel this road trip and then Taylor Swift the next. Great performers, but I'd rather be home with my family.
No,
right?
100%.
But there's also the side of things too, where we have to swallow our pride sometimes and be like, listen, if our bosses are okay, if our stakeholders are okay with it, taking a while to recover and we're not at our best, like that's their decision.
Yeah.
And that's something, going back to my golf course days that, I learned a long, long time ago, is that it's their property, it's their field. Like, yes, you take care of it. Yes, you pour all your blood, sweat, and tears in it and everything like that. And for anybody that's left a job, like that you've someplace you've been for a long time and taken care of, you miss it. Yeah. But like that part's over and it's gone, it's done. So what I mean by that is that just like, you would say, well, yeah, we can do the event. And somebody says, okay, well, you don't need to sod and, it'll just take 2 or 3 weeks to grow back. You're going to have, some ugly looking grass out there in the outfield or wherever. Right. If they say it's okay, then it's okay. And you have to make yourself okay with that.
Deal with it in a sense of like figuring out the solution for success.
The solution for success, and then personally, like not beating yourself up over like, oh my God, the field looks terrible.
Gray hair at 28.
I mean, I'm just going bald. I skipped right over gray and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna.
No,
I
got plenty up there. I've seen a lot worse. I'm gonna be honest with you.
That's right. I'm not full horseshoe pattern. But no, I think it's interesting on that industry piece and the stakeholder management. I think that's one thing. Like if we're going to level up as an industry and as a group of people, it's not just managing our staff and not just managing and taking care of ourselves. I think those are all important things. Don't get me wrong, but I also think it's managing up and showing people what we do, the impact that we have, and just how much it takes to get to that point day in and day out, and that it's not getting any easier. I think that's the other part that's really, if there is a troubling sign, is just, hey, people that can't get help, or people that are losing resources in terms of people, or budget reductions, equipment, they can't get equipment, whatever the case might be, right? It's not getting any easier. So I think for our industry, that level setting of expectations with those stakeholders as an industry, as a group, is going to be important going forward, because I think there's so much out there in terms of what needs to happen to make fields safer, to continue this effort that we've been on for a long, long time. Think about this. I mean, what would you say? Okay, this is Chase. Don't beat us up on the data. I know you're going to work on this. So, but if you had to just say, okay, I know this, okay?
Yeah.
There are roughly 8,000 school systems in the country. Or no, take that back. 8,000 park systems and 13,000 school systems in the country. Okay. How many of those, on a percentage basis, do you think have safe fields all the way across the board?
Baseball season is upon us. Toro's Field Pro 6040 was created with ball fields in mind. The Field Pro's multi-tool system allows 4 tools to be carried at once, significantly reducing the time required preparing infields. Scarifying, grading, and dragging can now be completed in a single pass, saving you time and effort. Visit Toro's website today to learn more about the Field Pro's 6040.
Every single one of their fields?
Yeah. Be honest.
I don't know. When you think about if you go to your local, Little League or local 30%.
30?
I know that's really low, but when you think about it,
I think it's high.
Really?
I do.
Again, that's what I mean. Like when you look at it face value, you think about so my local Little League that I grew up on, it's funny because you've seen the groundskeeper since you were a little kid, right? Mm-hmm. And now that you've been in the industry, you see what he does, and you're like, oh no, I forgot I was talking to.
You mean you're not supposed to take a chain link fence and pull it with an S10 across the diamond? That's not okay.
No, it's pulling it across the grass when they're done.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah.
I was talking to Butter Ball about that. I was like,
gosh,
Chris. I'm like, he's like, yeah. He had a talk in Chicago or whatever with their local Parks and Rec department. He's like, here's the thing. I need 2 things. Pick your drags up when you're done and take 5 extra minutes, go slower. It's so hard to find people to do that. And I think one of the big things, again, to answer one of your other questions, we have a lot of passionate people, not just about their work, but about this industry. People like you, people like me who want to advocate for it, who want to educate, because in Northern Virginia, I love it, but I'm also now the guy that everyone calls when they need something or when they have a question. And I'm like, oh, I don't need this. But again, I want to help and I want to have that impact. So it's a good thing, But yeah, it's not very high on that front. But, having people advocating for our industry, there's going to be jobs that open up at some of those complexes where they're like, yeah, we need someone who knows what they're doing because this really isn't safe for my child, And I think the problem that we're seeing is that a lot of them are synthetic's the answer. And like you said, people in a government setting see a lump sum okay, no maintenance, we're good to go. And that's where we also have that whole issue of that's not maintenance free, but everybody thinks it is. And that adds to the percentage of unsafe, complexes and fields and whatnot. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into that, but I don't know. Did you, Chase is doing the, USDA. Okay. So you were a part of that.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
community field survey.
Yeah. We did one of our podcasts on this trip and he went through the whole thing and it's a game changer if it happens,
Absolutely. And I think, Chase and I have connected several times on this, and a lot of the work that we do on that front, on front end consulting, so we call it fact finding and feasibility. So a school district or park system or whomever comes and says, hey, we need a new field, whether it's a renovation or it's a brand new field. We don't know what we want, or we think we want turf, or we think we want natural grass.
Yeah.
Explain to us this. So, and I've broken this down on other podcasts. I won't go too deeply into it, but looking at it, we try to look at it quantitatively by the numbers, right?
For sure.
And look at it qualitatively by things that I can't necessarily quantify for you that you, as an owner, need to place a value on, right? So. One thing here in the northern part of the country is, the kids can go out and take grounders on it in the spring, on the football field when they couldn't get on the baseball field because it's too wet, too cold, whatever. If I told you that would that whole field system is going to cost you $1 million more over 20 years, that
more than $1 million? Honestly,
it's more than $1 million.
Our field cost 1.4, and that was right when COVID hit.
Yeah, so if you extrapolate it all out, and I've talked about this before, like I said, but it's if you take it, you'll see a lot of comparisons, right? And I'm sure everybody's going to beat me up no matter what side of the coin you fall on.
Come and get it.
I'm just here. What's the saying right now? The in vogue saying, facts don't have feelings.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. This is the dotted line. What has been charged based off of a 20-year span.
So if we look at it in terms of initial install cost, the cost to replace it.
I was gonna say replacement's getting up to $1 million now.
You've got the labor, materials, contract services to take care of.
$10,000 each year for maintenance costs?
Some of them are far less than that, but like you also have your own maintenance that you have to build into that. Yeah. And certainly as you get into, specialized sports like lacrosse is a very intense maintenance regime, specifically in the goal creases. Yeah. Soccer doesn't get the love that it should on being a synthetic monster because ref runs especially just get beat up. PK spots and goalkeeper spots are bad, but so anyway, if you look at all these costs and wrap your head around it, for an average high school here, about the same size as Brentsville, I can tell you definitively that over the course of a 20-year period, it's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of like $1.5 to $1.8 million more to own a synthetic turf system. All right, so if I'm just looking at numbers,
why doesn't that scare you?
That's a lot. But
not you. I'm talking about
no.
Cost.
If you're an end user in cost, I guess there's a couple ways to look at this. And here's we have these conversations literally every week. So I'll pull the curtain back a little bit and kind of share with you. So I have folks that will come to me and say, it's capital cost. It's once every 10 years. It's a low operating cost. It's a lot easier for me to get capital dollars, Drew, than it is for me to get operating dollars. So guess what?
We're going to go
I'm going synthetic. I'm going synthetic. And there's that aspect of it. There's also the aspect, and this is erroneous, right, on their part, like you said, about maintenance free, or we can just turn this loose to, Bob.
Anybody.
Bob knows how to run a dust mop, and God bless him. He's a great guy, but he,
doesn't understand the
nuances of it, and that's why you need a professional field manager, because there's a huge safety component that comes into play, right? And also for the functionality of that system for the life of it, you got to take care of it. It's not going to last 10, 12 years like it's supposed to if you don't take care of it. And I always liken it to this, is like, if, Bob couldn't take care of our, Toyota Camry or Honda Accord field, why are we handing him the keys to a Lamborghini right now? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Lamborghini loses value very rapidly.
When you're doing, well, that, and it's so there's that whole aspect of it. And I think too, on the natural side, it does scare people on the natural side, because there's a lot of components that have to come together to be able to take care of it the right way. And I think, not to toot our horn, but we've tried to make that process pretty simple for owners to just say, hey, here's the plan. Here's what you need to do. We'll either do this with you. We'll do it for you in some cases. In very limited cases, we'll do it for them. We're not really a contractor per se. We're purely consulting. But on the flip side of that, we've also had folks where you just, hey, we turn it over and they have a plan, and we check in with them a couple times a year, and they can maintain it. And these are places that are going from the mud bowls, the mud pits, to something that's really, really respectable, as a high school field or a Parks and Rec field or whatever, and they're able to do it. And so I think that's the thing, is just, leveling up in that sense. So the natural grass synthetic debate, I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. Now there is some interesting stuff though that's happening in the northeastern part of the United States.
That's what I am so, I don't know if flabbergasted is the right term for it, but like New Hampshire, Connecticut did it, right?
Massachusetts is really leading the charge right now.
You're talking about one of the hardest places in the country to grow grass because of the winters that they have, and I'm not saying it's
but I get it.
Yeah, we're all sort of in that transition zone area, which we all know is hard to grow grass in. But like when you talk about like people who are like, it's the prime location for an artificial turf field for all those that don't know anything about grass, right? Or anything about field management. And they're willing to put their neck out on the line of like, this isn't safe. We don't want our kids on it. No one's allowed to put this in their high school. And then even further than that, is it New Hampshire or somebody said you're not allowed to put any fertilizer out that's not organic or anything like that. And
so Maine, there's a couple of communities in Maine that are going down that route right now.
It's not that they're making it more difficult. It's they're trying to do what's right. And I just find it so interesting that no one else has even taken note of that, I
think it really is like the closest thing to an existential threat that the synthetic market is seen. And again, I'm just
like stay up there.
Well,
stay up there.
You've got several issues there, and I don't know how it plays out. I'm not an environmental scientist.
Exactly,
I'm not going to sit here and say this is wrong or this is right.
We just do know that artificial turf fields are a ton of pollution, when it's all done.
Well, and on the flip side of that, and I'm not advocating on either side here, you're going to have folks that will say, well, you know how much water it takes to water a natural grass field. You know how many
not as much as you
chemicals
think.
that you have to put down. And there's a lot of different ways to look at this. I look at it from the standpoint of, okay, let's just say an average natural grass field is going to get 6-8 applications a year in a parks and rec setting. That's probably overkill.
Yeah.
In a parks and rec or high school setting.
Oh yeah.
But in large part, let's just say 6 to 8 applications of some type of pesticide or fertilizer. And we know that the latent effects of that might last for 2 or 3 days. And we also have really good research. Again, we've had to back this up in certain cases and with consulting clients of.
And the golf side does a phenomenal job with it.
Residue reentry, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
With a synthetic turf system, now there's a lot we don't know right now as far as what we're exposed to, and I'm not going to go like full Joe Rogan here and get all weird and kooky with the science and whatnot. Yeah. But like we just don't know yet, and I think there's the issue with the PFAS concerns. Where does that end up landing? So there's like 30 or 40, I can't remember the exact number, on the EPA list. There's over 18,000 that are actually out there in the world. So
it's 40.
Who knows?
Might be a little sketchy.
Well, and the other thing too that I think that we're seeing is a movement. Just take the chemical stuff and take that science part off. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of movement in terms of stormwater and best management practices. The really unsexy part about the sports fields that there's no ribbon cutting for, hey, we got the main trunk line in. Awesome, guys. I get excited about that, but I'm literally like one of 5 people in the world. Gotcha. But so the stormwater side of things, at least here in Ohio, and I see it in other parts of the country too, is they're really clamping down on the ways that these fields can be built. One, that's driving up the cost significantly. And two, in some places, that's how they're going to essentially outlaw these things.
Yeah.
It won't be because, hey, the chemicals, this, that, and the other thing. It'll be through stormwater practices and guidelines that it's going to be impractical to build these things. So I'm not against it. I think it has a place. I think it has a purpose, everything 100%. Like that. So on the flip side of this is a great segue into, Bermuda grass. Let's talk about Bermuda grass. So I'll tell you the story real quick of how Bermuda grass came to Central Ohio, and it wasn't me that started it. So so the crew, Weston Applefeller, put it in over at their training facility, which is now no longer in use. They've got a new training facility that's managed over here.
I remember,
So he had it, and then Denison University, Kevin Mercer. I was
going to say Mercer. I believe he was one of the first ones.
They did it. So Kevin came from the East Coast, and he was familiar with it. He put it in over at Denison, and there's also a gentleman, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. Pam Sherritt knows him well, down at Rio Grande University. Very small, but soccer powerhouse, and like the very smallest level of college soccer. They had it as well. This is the very beginning of my business. I was still just starting it. And I remember a sales rep who's a friend of mine brought me out to a local field here of the biggest classification of football. The team had just won the state championship the year before, and it was like September, and the field was just gone. I mean, like there might be 30% cover on this field. And we go out there with the maintenance director, and super nice lady. And I'm like, "What's going on here?" She's like, "Oh, this thing dies every year, fourth game of the season." And I go out and look, and it's all POA annual Triv, just loaded to the gills, and it's just basically waved the white flag and said,
"Take it out.
We're done. We're done.
You're bringing the dump trucks. We need to load them up."
So we have this big meeting, and again, this is a big deal because this whole community is football crazed. They just won state at the highest classification. It's a big deal. So we go into these meetings, and like, I don't know, I truly believe there's something to be said for having confidence and going into situations, even if you're
100%.
uncomfortable. So we walk into this meeting, and all the big wigs from the school are there, stakeholders, everything like that, and they're like, "Okay, what are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, you're going to tell me." And they get all flustered. They're like, "Whoa, you're the consultant. You're the consultant." I said, "No. We're gonna walk through this."
Yeah.
So the first thing we start with is, okay, hey, what are your main sports in the field? Football, soccer, in the fall, lacrosse in the spring. Okay, that sounds good. And then what's the most important sport? Well, football, duh. It's like I have to ask the question.
We understand.
Yeah, but you have to. You got
maybe soccer's important. Yeah, I don't know.
I want to hear you say the words football. Just humor me. So, and then I asked them. I said, okay, well, how many events do you do in the fall with those two sports being on? Because it's girls and boys.
Girls, boys, varsity, junior, varsity.
All that stuff. And they're
chaos.
Like, so the guy that's in charge of athletics says, well, we do about the same amount we've done always. And I said, well, how many is that? Well, about the same amount. I said, I need a number.
Number, please.
Yeah, let's quantify this. Like, I'm a nerd.
How many hours?
So we go back and we count up their previous year, 76 events.
Yeah.
We go back 3 years, just arbitrarily, and pick it out. 38 events. So they double their number of events on the field inside of 3 years.
Yeah.
So then I asked them the question. I said, okay, do we build a field that can handle 80, 85 events a year? Or do we, do we build a field that can handle 40 events a year? We can't host less events. Everybody loves playing in this stadium. It's iconic. It's our stadium. Okay, good.
Right.
You just answered. You answered that question.
I appreciate you saying that.
So they say, okay, well, I said, so can we shut the field down for spring lacrosse? Oh, absolutely not. You can't do that. Lacrosse needs to play there. I said, well, you did tell me it was either the second or third most important sport, so I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So shutting it down is not an option. Okay. And then, we talked about sodding and we talked about the cost there, and they're like, well, that's you're talking it's going to be $100,000 just for whatever it was. And that kind of freaked them out a bit. Okay. So
we're sprigging.
Budget here.
We're sprigging something.
So then I get in there. They're like, well, okay. Like, what's the magic 8 ball say here? And I said, well, we're gonna sprig Bermuda grass on your field, and I'm gonna tell you, like, everybody's head, nuclear detonation. The video, all at once.
Mushroom cloud at everyone's head.
we don't grow Bermuda grass up here. It's not something that we do. And quite honestly, I'd never done it before in my entire life.
You were like, we're doing this.
Yeah, we're going to try it. So, it was that whole thing of like putting yourself in an uncomfortable spot of like, hey, and I say this with our business all the time, like, we get paid to learn.
Yeah.
So if we've done something 1,000 times, we're going to find a way to make it 1% better. If we've never done something before, we're going to get as much information from as many primary sources as we possibly can.
Yeah.
Talk to as many people as possible and figure it out. Right. And I love that whole aspect of learning and having your back against the wall and having to produce and figuring out, how far into Montana I need to move if this doesn't go right. And these people from this football craze community come after me and try to murder me. But, it's actually about 10 miles off the Canadian border.
Gotcha.
It's far enough away.
You can stay a U.S. citizen, right?
I can still go across and get cheap cigarettes and prescription drugs or something like that. So, but regardless, Bermuda grass, you and I have had this discussion. We'll talk about that in a quick second here. But the interesting thing there is that I don't think that it's just the only answer, but I do think that for certain situations, and we've adapted and learned. That was 2018 that we decided on that, 2019 that we grew it in. So now we're 5 seasons in, and we've got another 6 fields here in Central Ohio. And see, you take another sip of that Red Bull.
Sorry,
you need it. You need it.
Sorry.
You need it. So it's been an interesting ride of, the successes, the failures, learning and growing and just talking to people that, that deal with it. And what I've found is that it's, not as easy to grow up here as what people would make it out to be. So I don't want that. I don't want people to think that
have that perception.
Here's DeMay again, just saying Bermuda grass, like, he's got stock in it or something.
Yeah.
I think that, there's certain instances where we didn't recommend it, right, for certain reasons and things like that. But the thing, and one of the driving forces from an agronomic perspective of why we have gone down that route in certain situations. One, the durability it really is unmatched in what you can do and beat that stuff up with, especially for a fall sport. Spring, I'm a lot more cautious, and it's much different up here in the spring than what you guys face, you know, with spring traffic. But I'm a little more cautious. We try to, steer it now towards fall only fields if we can, because we have a lot of districts here that don't have rectangle sports in the spring. Just that doesn't exist. They don't have lacrosse. So there's that aspect of it. The other thing too is, especially from a groundskeeping perspective, if there's not a qualified sports field manager there, a lot of times we'll kind of go that route just because, number one, it's kind of hard to screw it up in the summertime. Water it, mow it, fertilize it, and you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Don't overdo it.
Don't overdo it. Yeah, don't do any of those. Well, you can mow it every day, and it would love it. You can't.
Not too much water, not enough, not too much fertilizer.
No, that's really the ticket. And then I think from the standpoint of just being able to grow it in quickly and do it, in a pretty inexpensive fashion. So
I'm hoping quickly with this stupid weather. Sorry,
well,
go ahead.
well, we can talk about that too real quick. But the the thing with it is, for those of you that haven't sprigged or don't, so basically we use a conversion factor of 5 square feet of sod equals 1 bushel. We sprig somewhere between 500 and 800 bushels to the acre, depending on how squirrely you're feeling. So you can
felt pretty squirrely when we put ours.
I think there's that's another research back thing that we could talk about. Chase actually, I think, did some of that work. But you
ever heard a guy sprig 1,200 per acre?
We did that last year in a field.
Sorry, I was just curious.
We did that last year in a field, and I think it was too much.
Yeah. So, sorry to call you out there, Travis, but Travis Hogan, he does a lot of work on, saving money when it comes to like the Chiefs and everything. Yeah. And the way he sort of renovates his practice facility is, he puts sod down the middle and then he grows in the rest. And when there's certain areas, obviously whether it's winter kill from working on it in a specific way or whatnot, those areas he goes heavy because he thinks that the heavier the rate, the faster it grows in. So there's that's what I think is really curious because I never thought about it that way before. I'm like, wow, maybe it's true. Like I'm not going to do that because I've got plenty of time. He's got 6 weeks.
He's got 6 weeks, and it is definitely a different animal. I think there's a few things there. I think obviously there's different rates of establishment based on the cultivar.
100%.
Like I can tell you definitively, and it's not to knock one or the other, but I can tell you definitively, like Tahoma 31 grows in probably to be at 100% establishment 2, maybe even 3 weeks faster than Iron Cutter.
Yeah.
That's just a fact of life. It's not the end of the world. It's 2 or 3 weeks in the lifespan of a field. Like, who cares? But when you're under the gun, it does make a difference.
It helps.
it helps. But so on the flip side of that though is that
the other day, 38 inches. You kidding me?
Oh well, yeah. That's No,
what the heck I was
even
doing?
I was even surprised by that. That was.
I didn't put an illegal amount. I promise on this.
No, that was. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that was. I didn't even expect that one. That was pretty nuts. So the
flip side.
The flip side of that is that I think there can be too much plant material out there, and this is just me speaking anecdotally. And I think there can be too much disturbance. So especially if you do sod to sprigs, where the sod's being ground up and pushed down on the ground with a disc, I think to go over that enough times to get to 1,200 bushels to the acre. From what I've seen, I think that it's too much.
Way too much, honestly.
Too much traffic to put, and it pushes too much down in there. So I think, the other thing is that, it was a big study. It was at, I think it was Arkansas, Mississippi State, University of Kentucky, and there was probably one more, maybe Georgia, where they did this establishment study. Mike Richardson was on it. Christian Baldwin, who's now at the Scotts, Miracle Grow. I think Chase might have been a part of it. But anyhow, so they did this work and they basically looked at 2 different factors. They looked at nitrogen rate per week, because you'll have the guys that are like, you got to throw 1 pound a week out there. Just feed it. Yeah. And then you're going to have the other folks that you got to go 1,000 bushels an acre. If you don't go 1,000 bushels an acre up here up north, you got no chance.
Yeah.
So it was interesting what they did. They went, I think it was like 400, 600, 800. I don't know if they went at 1,000.
Yeah.
And they also went at 0, a quarter, half, 3/4, and 1 pound per week, right? Here's the funny thing. This is latitude 36 in these 4 different locations. And what they found was that in 8 weeks at 0 and I think it's 600 bushels to the acre, you couldn't tell a difference between any of the plots.
That's so cool.
So it's an amazing plant.
Bermuda's the son of a you-know-what.
Yeah, it's an amazing plant. Now, and it's also provided the weather, though, too. And I think that's 100%. The thing that, people are struggling with right now across the country, right? If you're listening to this recently, if you listen to this 2 years from now, you're like, oh, what are these guys talking about? But
these guys are stupid.
It's been an incredibly cool,
mild,
moderate, whatever you want to call it.
No humidity, no temps.
Yeah, we're finally kind of breaking through here a little bit, I hope, on the weather, and we'll see what happens.
A couple of 90-degree days this week coming up in Virginia, which is great. But
and from my experience, and again, super limited. I'm just a Yankee that's trying to grow Bermuda grass in the wrong spot. No. But I think when we see nights above 65, that we're not really daytime temps are important.
Yeah,
full sun, as much sun as you can have with as little cloud cover as possible is really important. And on the other side of that is nighttime temps. If we're 65 or above, that's great. If we're 70 or above, we are rocking and rolling. So, but I think as far as the surface goes and from a maintenance standpoint, it lends itself to being easier to take care of.
Yeah. I was just checking my night times.
No, you're like, oh, how bad is this going to be?
I thought 60 was the good one. You said 65. I was like, oh no.
Well, and it's a really interesting thing. I always, from a student standpoint, I've taught before at the university level as an adjunct, and explaining C3 photosynthesis and C4 photosynthesis to students is like, wait, there's plants that can
say?
Yeah. And you talk about, the dark cycles and things like that of what happens. And then it's really easy to liken it to real life, right? You can show them soybeans and corn and be hey, those are C4 plants doing the same thing that this Bermuda grass is doing. Yeah. It's just that much more efficient, right? So, those are good teaching tools. But I think from a standpoint of like managing cool season, that's what, we're always like, okay, if we have, limited resources in terms of, somebody's time, attention, skill, experience, whatever, and we're saying that we have, let's just say Kentucky bluegrass, and we want to maintain that at, like a 2-inch height even, right? Between water management, disease management, herbicide treatments, fertilizer applications, all that through the summertime, right? So we're basically asking it, hey, I need you to go through the worst 10 weeks of the year weather-wise, and then I need you to be at your peak for the next 10 weeks.
I was going to say, almost immediately after that.
If you have a professional groundskeeper, doable, 100% doable.
No budget,
But if you've got somebody who's like, hey,
Joe Schmo,
Carl, has to mow all the grounds. Like there's a guy, his name's not Carl, but I remember going out to a client site one time and I see this mower sitting on the middle of the baseball field and it's like half mowed. And I'm like, where's this guy at? And I'm looking around. So I call him. No, I call him and he's like, yeah, man, water fountain sprung a leak over in the middle school. So I had to hop off the mower. I was like, there's a game today on the baseball field. He's like, water leak in the middle school. Like, I got to take care of this. So these guys are literally stretched so thin that like, that's just what, and so that's what I'm saying is, so schools like that, or, even a park system like that where, hey, I've got 25 sites to take care of. How am I going to make this one nice is, it's a priority management thing, number one, but those owners shouldn't feel like, oh, hey, I don't deserve, or I'm not, we're never going to be able to do that, this, that, and the other thing. You got to want better and you got to want more. And I think to your point about the people that think they have it figured out and everything like that, those are some of the most dangerous people in the world in any walk of life. I always, like anybody who thinks that they've got it made in the shade, that's danger zone. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone's going to come bite you in the ass.
It's the people that think that, hey, we can always do better. There's a way, and let's try and find that way. So Bermuda grass is one of those ways. It's not a surefire silver bullet, but it works in a lot of situations here. And the other thing I always say too is, worst case scenario, somewhere between like 12 and 15 weeks before the season, if you're screwed, and you got time to fix it.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas we could get into September with bluegrass and it's like, oh, hey, like,
she's hurting a little bit.
Yeah. and by the way, there's 10, 12, 15 weeks of football coming and
there's no time to grow it in that fast.
Exactly. So, it's trying to always have a pivot point and out like, hey, if we encounter the worst case scenario here, what do we do?
Yeah.
And that's something we, as a person, right, as sports field managers, I think we all do that. We always, for better or worse, think of like the worst case scenario. And hopefully I'm trying to always think of, okay, hey, what would we do if we couldn't do, if this happened, right? What would be the next thing we do to get back to whole and get this right? So it's a tough thing, when bad things happen, but how you respond to them, I think is really like what shows the mettle and perseverance of our folks.
The Toro company is known for innovation. For example, the Reelmaster 5010H improves performance and productivity. The industry's first and only reel mower with a true hybrid drive system. Save up to 20% on fuel use while also lowering costs and lowering the vehicle's carbon imprint. Visit Toro's website today to learn more about this revolutionary mower and discover the power of sustainable and efficient grounds maintenance.
And this goes back to your point, with, the question you asked me before. I think that the people we have in the industry right now are lending their hand to those moments and to those solutions and professionalism in that aspect of, I absolutely need this in order to get the job done. And people are starting to respond to those things positively, whether that's professional level or even, taking a field and putting Bermuda grass in the middle of Ohio, like people are listening and understanding that there is value to a sports field manager. So, and again, I love all that, something that we actually were a part of that I do want to get into a little bit. It's North Union High School, right?
Yeah. So, North Union.
You guys had me up for an OTF grounds and greens spring day. See?
Yep.
Dr. Carr made me get that right yesterday.
On brand.
But one of the things that we did before the event was we went up to a high school to discuss, developing a turf management program at Doug Karcher's alma mater.
Yeah.
And about an hour north, 40 minutes.
About an hour northwest of the city.
Something really cool is you are doing their field at the time, and you had a meeting before that about what you're doing and all that, and sort of bringing that to the forefront. So I didn't know that there was going to be like the entire school board and the superintendent. And
what did I tell you about uncomfortable situations?
I wasn't uncomfortable. I'm just
saying, hey, extreme growth. Boom.
Pam and I walked in and we were like, who are all these people? Like, what's going on? And then this is superintendent. This is the school board member 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then principal, assistant principal.
So let me say this.
So I'll let you explain it, what it is and what we were trying to do.
Well, I'll explain it, and then I want to say something I think is important, and it's important at a big picture level too within our industry. So the first thing is that this high school is a client of ours doing 2 new practice fields and redoing their entire stadium field.
Which you just finished up, right?
Yeah, they're going in right now.
That's
so
awesome.
2 from sod, 1 from seed, and so far, so good. That was real wood, by the way.
Don't be questioning that.
yeah, there will be. Yeah. So the premise of the project when we first started out there was some community folks that they have a really, really strong FFA agronomy program that goes to the national competition in Indy every year and just kills it. They do great.
Yeah.
And the question with, Doug Karcher having been there, and if the folks don't know who Doug is,
department chair
for horticulture and crop science here at Ohio State. He's an Ohio State grad. He's from North Union High School. That's where he grew up in that community. And then he went on to go to Michigan State to get his PhD and his master's, and then was at Arkansas for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Renowned researcher, great scientist, just a cool dude.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome
and
guy.
Loves turf, loves, our industry, sports, turf, golf, lawn care, all the way around.
Big advocate. Yep.
Huge advocate. So, he had been approached, and he's a good friend of mine by the school board. Hey, could we create a curriculum, and is there a way to use this? And I'm not sure how they first saw what you were doing. I'm not sure if Doug introduced him to you and like Athlete Turf and all those folks, and they started seeing. They're like, wait, so like what we're doing is already happening somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so when I started talking, I was like, yeah, like it's happening. It's not just like lip service. It's not just like, hey, you guys want to watch a mower go across the field? Like they're actually doing this stuff.
Yeah.
They're performing it and doing it at a high level, and they're being put into situations where they get to go other places and learn it and how they do it and everything like that. So they thought that was really, really cool. And when the opportunity was like, well, hey, Drew's going to come in here and speak, I said, well, hey, let's go ahead and have these folks come. First, they came to our state conference and show. So show them, our OTF event, Ohio Turf
Incredible, by the way. If you ever get the opportunity to go, you should.
1,500 people. It's a trade show about the size of what SFMA is at National.
Yeah.
And brought them down there, and they're like, "Oh my god, like this is what your industry's like." Yeah, like there's opportunity here, and it's not just
welcome.
welcome. It's not just like you get a college degree and then you go dig ditches. Like you can be in lawn care, and there's lawn care guy. That's what I went into. I went into lawn care, and I was like, there's probably 60, 80 people in there, and I said, you realize that there's probably about 25% of the people in here that have a net worth that's like well into the millions of dollars, and they're wearing like grease stained Wranglers and like grass stained Keds or New Balance shoes, and they're like, really? I'm like, yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah. So like just letting them see that. So then the opportunity of you come into our OTF thing in the spring, a couple months later. We had advanced those conversations and talks about what a curriculum looks like, everything like that. And one big thing that and this is I'm not blowing smoke when I say this, but I believe that people inherently need to see what the top looks like, what the actual peak of something looks like, to then set their expectations correctly. And if you're not one of those people, then you're probably not going to be somebody that I associate with professionally or personally. I expect high, have expectations. So when we brought you in, I think the point was to show them that, and I said it in the meeting. I said, listen, here's a guy that's doing this literally what you want to do at the highest level possible.
Stop it.
No, I'm dead serious though. Like there's few people
I said that in the meeting too.
There are people that you could sit there and debate, but like they're doing it at that high of a level and getting kids interested and getting them on the trajectory that this is a career path for them. And you have to see that to appreciate that. So for them to see that and talk to you, I know that, it was a lot, because they're like, holy crap, like everything that we want to do is right here in front of us, but it's also a lot to do. And I think that's the thing that you were pretty honest with about in building your program, just how crazy and difficult that it really has been. It's not been a struggle in a bad way. It's been literally one rung at a time, climbing up the ladder, and sometimes it's not easy to do. That being said, I think that from our standpoint as an industry, we should embrace that. And I guess that's what I was trying to do, was just try and embrace that part of it, of show people what the peak is, but also too is find a way to help folks like yourself. What can we do to help? And so that's what I think the message should be. We're always trying to say, hey, what's the best way to attract people? What's the best way to attract people? I think that's good to know, but I think I'd rather see us say, okay, hey, the people that are doing it at a high level, what can we do to help?
Yeah.
It's probably a better use of our time and our energy and our effort.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to get on TikTok, or not everybody's. I'm not saying that's all what you guys do, but not everybody's going to be. There's other ways to help
recruit. To the Ohio State program. Doesn't just magically happen because of a post, right?
No, and I think that's the thing. It takes people connecting and seeing, hey, here's this program in Virginia. We could have the same thing here in Ohio. So, I don't know what the end result will be. I know that they're going to have, 3 fantastic fields. If I have anything to do with it, we'll see.
That's all that matters, right?
No, it doesn't. But how they stay there and the opportunity that they have, that means a lot to me. I mean, that legacy of, leaving behind something that, okay, hey, you guys can take care of this. And, between the students that they have there and the talent that they have on their academic side, with agronomy and everything like that, it's not a far stretch to say, take care of this grass too.
And so, I mean, the big thing, and I think it went well. I think I did okay. You know, I think
You did great.
Okay.
You did great.
I think I did okay of getting like the point across on like how it. And again, I did explain how difficult it was to get it started and everything, but I think that you guys have had it set up to where it is the most simple sort of infusion into that program that I handed them my curriculums, and no one had that for me when I started. You know, no one said, "Here you go." You know, like, Did you guys ever get that, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got.
I was gonna say they kept the flash drive on us. Never had that. You have Pam and Doug talking about Ohio State University, the Ohio State. Sorry.
You don't have to.
And you know, being such a big advocate of getting you into the school if you need help. You know, because there are so many schools that you can't even talk to the, you know, admissions office about stuff like that. You know, certification programs offered, you like, we'll have them ready for you. Like, we will do it free of charge, things like that. They have you who is readily working on their fields and will obviously be a resource at any time to help with whatever they're doing. And it's just, I mean, I think it's crazy if they don't do it because you guys are like, there's such a big support system. You know, I had Dr. Goatley, and Dr. Goatley didn't know anything about it before, like anything like, oh, I can help you with that. Like all these things, like you guys are so far ahead of the 8 ball. Like they can just start it and it's just going to grow like wildfire.
I agree. And I think from an industry standpoint, you know, and all the folks I talk to here in Ohio, they're like, how can we help?
Yeah.
So I think that's where that mindset shift can be a big tool for us as advocates is like, hey, you don't have to do it all yourself, right? There's been a lot of good work that's been done to this point. Let's build on that, right? Let's take advantage of, not take advantage of you in a negative way, but take advantage of all the hard work and blood, sweat, and tears that you and others like you have put into it. And let's just not reinvent the wheel. Let's just keep going.
And it's working. I mean, I've helped a lot of different schools get started, and one that I always bring up, shout out Kevin McCaffrey out at Costa Del Mar in Long Beach. Yeah, awesome guy. Yeah, you know, and he's just brand new to it, and he loves it. It's great for him personally, you know, helping with his coaching career and everything. But he's now started 2 more programs out there, so there's 3 now on the West Coast. Like that's the goal.
That's that network effect that's going to continue to happen and as we spread it out.
So there's a really cool opportunity back home so there's a new high school, and I'm going to try and get them to build one. You know, I need a sports field manager to take over that program there. So shout out if anybody who wants to do it. No, but what's really cool is that the Commanders just bought land in our county.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me about that. Yeah.
So.
Great opportunity.
Crazy about it is that so the school that's supposed to be built, there's a fence in between the practice facility and the school. So there could be like a co-op or something with the Commanders, you know, where they would have, you know, a full grounds crew of students where the class would literally just go like. Something like that would be absolutely insane, you know, to create that relationship. And that's just one little bridge that could lead so many things with the Commanders and the county. Like, that's something that, like, wow, that's like the next level. You know what I mean?
That is. And I think that's the opportunity that we're not missing, but we're just scratching the surface on. So I can't wait to see it all come to fruition. But
we're gonna have to do a part 2 because this is you got to go. And
I got to go. But this has been awesome.
Yeah, dude. I know it's been fantastic.
The next one we'll do this. I'm glad we got to do it live.
And
in person.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. Sorry to keep you away too long, but I appreciate all that you do, and I'm excited to see what happens with North Union and all your Bermuda grass up here. I'm excited to see if mine grows.
It'll be good. It'll be fine, man. It'll be fine. So well, thanks so much, man.
Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.